I think everything's in flux right now, but there's certainly a push to figure out how to make the government more nimble and leverage technology more instead of just throwing people at the problem.
I'm John Generone, Editor-in-Chief of Tech Edge. Thrilled to be here at RSAC Conference 2025 in San Francisco, California. I have with me today a managing partner from Merlin Ventures. This is Seth Spergel. Seth, thanks for joining the show.
Thank you for having me. This is great.
So before we get into the nitty-gritty, can you give us an overview of your firm and tell us what separates you from the rest that might be similar in their investment approach?
So we're an early stage cyber fund. I'm personally based in the Washington, D.C. area, but the majority of the team, including my partner Shai, are based in Tel Aviv.
Okay.
So we have a very heavy focus on the Israeli market. As you can imagine, there's a lot of cyber over there. In terms of what differentiates us, I mean, certainly it's the access to that market. But within the US, we have built up a very large organic network of CISOs and other security practitioners that we use to get a feel for the market, understand where we should invest, help our companies really navigate this market. But in terms of the access to the Israeli market, one of the things that's really kind of been a differentiator for us that we hadn't expected originally is our investment model. So we do a lot of co-investment with the bigger US firms that want more access to the Israeli market at the seed stage. And so we've got tight partnerships with firms like Bessemer and Lightspeed and others, and that gives us a leg up in terms of working with these companies in the portfolio. But it also it's just a great way to sort of broaden the Israeli market's access to the US market.
It makes a lot of sense. Now, just touching back again on the DC thing, the U.S. government is trying to rebuild. I mean, from what I understand, there are a lot of big legacy, big industrial companies that for years have had a monopoly on sales to the Department of Defense. My take is that's changing gradually, that there's some smaller innovators who are actually getting some contracts. Is that right?
It's starting to. I think everything's in flux right now, but there's certainly a push to figure out how to make the government more nimble and leverage technology more instead of just throwing people at the problem.
Yeah. Can we go back to Israel for a moment? Because sure. I've observed this over the years. I meet so many Israelis that are in this sector, and my understanding is a lot of them are learning these skills in the military, right? So when they leave the military, they're going out and starting companies, right? Yeah,
so really the reason Israel has the cybersecurity ecosystem, and just to put it in context, Israel is a little over 0.1% of the world population, 0.1% of
punches above its weight,
of the world population, right? So not 1%, but a tenth of 1%. But tends to see between 30 and 40% of the worldwide cyber investment going into the country.
Wow.
If you look at
bonkers. Whoa.
If you look at like unicorns in the cyber market, about 30% also in Israel. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head for 24, but for 2023, 8 of the 10 biggest acquisitions in cyber worldwide were Israeli. So you just have this huge concentration there. But I think it comes down to there's massive talent coming out of that market, but you also have built up an ecosystem around them, right? Where you have repeat founders who are there to sort of mentor the folks coming out of those units.
Yeah.
And then you've got a set of very focused cyber funds like ourselves that know how to work with those early stage companies and propel them into the US market.
Makes a lot of sense. Now, tell me, there are all kinds of technology funds. We're in San Francisco, of course, loads of them around here. Why is there a need, and why did you guys decide to focus pretty narrowly in cybersecurity?
Yeah, so if you look in the Israeli market, what you'll see is there's a small group of funds that are like us that are explicitly focused on the seed stage cyber market in Israel. And what we see is these companies come out of Unit 8200, the Israeli military, with immense technical talent, but most of them have not really built a business before. They don't know how to navigate the US market. They don't know how to build a business. And so you need to have a lot of specialization to help take this talent and turn it into a business. And so that includes like the network we talked about. It includes just a knowledge of the market. It includes relationships with potential acquirers, right? All the different pieces that go into building up a large company. And it tends to pay off, right? Like what you see is the acquisitions coming out of the Israeli cyber market are very different from acquisitions you see in the rest of the venture market, right? They happen more quickly. They tend to be much larger in terms of multiples on revenue. And so it makes sense if you can sort of build up that expertise to really focus on that market and get those companies what they need to succeed.
That's a great answer there. Seth, this is a perfect way to end our afternoon because we've had about 10 operators come on our show today, and you probably won't be surprised, every single one of them mentioned the same 2 letters, AI.
Yep.
As an investor, where do you see AI most important within the cybersecurity world? Because it can't be that everybody's going to, knock it out of the park with it.
Yeah, I mean, It's a hard answer, right? Because I used to work with a guy who even before we had AI as we see it today, but it was still becoming all the rage, would talk about it like peanut butter, right? Just spread it on everything, it'll make everything taste better. And we are seeing that to some degree, right? Every company we talk to is talking about their AI angle. But I think one of the more interesting trends I've seen has been the reinvention of technologies that never lived up to their promises in the past, right? That were great pitches at the time, but didn't scale because they required too much human intervention, right? Too much manual configuration, too much, basically throwing too many people at a problem in order to make this technology work. And now we can embed the intelligence in those applications themselves and just throw them out in the environment and let them work. And so we're seeing a lot of these applications that we thought were done, right, coming back. Like just one example that I think everybody would say never really worked was DLP, right? And now we're seeing the rise of newer companies that are much more aware of what you're actually doing on your system and can make more intelligent decisions, right?
Yeah.
And so we're seeing that over and over in a lot of different segments of the market.
Great. All right, for the last question, Seth, I want to kind of give you the floor here and tell me, in addition to AI, because of course it's an important theme, as an investor, anything else jumping out at you this year at RSA that you've heard in any of the meetings you've had thus far?
I mean, again, I think I'd go back to we're just seeing a lot of these ideas that were a good idea originally but couldn't quite work now coming out. But I think one other thing that's been interesting is I've seen a lot more interest around software security, right, or application security, where maybe it felt like it was dying down a little bit over the last few years. Now it really seemed to be coming back roaring. And again, I think it goes back to we can now have systems that are a lot smarter and can help scale the number of security practitioners we've historically been very constrained by that can help developers make better decisions.
All right, great. We're going to wrap it up there. Seth, it's been a terrific interview. I really appreciate you joining the show, and I hope to see you at our conference in Princeton next month. All right, I'm John General, and this has been Seth Spergel, who is a managing partner at Merlin Ventures. I'm signing off from San Francisco.